Let's say you are in the market for a new car, a luxury car that is, and you don't want to shop at Audi, and BMW is not your kind of brand, and you don't want to go to Lexus either. Where do you go? What do you do? Well, maybe this DS7 might be an option for you. My name is Peter, and in this video I'm going to talk you around this DS7, show you what it's all about, and see if it is a real valuable alternative for those established brands like Audi, Lexus and BMW. It starts here at the front, I think, with quite a unique face. DS used to be part of Citroën, of course, but it's now really its own brand with its own brand identity, and they really want to project that French luxury feeling. Now, most of that is on the inside, but it starts here on the outside as well. I think with this signature daytime running lights that we also see in the new DS8, these main beams here and the unique front grille with the chrome logo and the chrome strips here. Personally, I don't like chrome that much, and that's the same here actually, but it does give a character vibe right away. This car is the 4x4 E-Tense version, and it's also a special edition, but it means it's a plug-in hybrid, so partly electric, partly combustion engine, which is a nice mix that suits the car really well, as we'll see in a bit. Size-wise, you got to think Audi Q5, BMW X3, those kind of cars, and it really aims at those cars and those brands and really wants to compete in that luxury upper segment. Now, all that cool design from the front does not really continue here on the side. If you look at it from the side profile, you would mistake it for a Nissan Qashqai or an Audi Q5 maybe. It's pretty generic, and that's a bit of a missed opportunity, I think, because DS wants to be different, and as we'll see on the inside later, does a lot of things to be different. But here on the side, it's pretty conventional. There is a few cues from the front, like the chrome around the windows and the chrome roof bars, but that is about it. It's pretty generic. On the other hand, that's also kind of nice because they haven't done anything crazy with the door handles or the windows or anything. It's just a normal side profile of a car. 4.60 meters long, 1.60 meters and a bit high, and about 1.90 wide. So really Audi Q5, BMW X3, like I already mentioned. That's the kind of car, which I think is a nice mix between maneuverability on the one hand and space on the inside on the other hand. So it's a nice car as far as size goes. 20-inch wheel and tire combination on this version, which I think suits the car pretty well. After the slightly disappointing side, luckily the design continues here in the rear. The first thing that you notice obviously are these sort of wiry rear lights, which is really nice, looks really cool at night, very elegant solution. I personally like the fact that they've written DS Automobiles up here, which I think is a cool touch. It's a trend we see more and more in the car industry these days, that brands, instead of just putting a logo, they also put their name in writing again. But we still have the normal logo here too, and both are in chrome as well as this strip down here to continue that chrome accent theme. Something nice I noticed is the exhaust tips. Obviously you got one here and one on the other side, and there's a real exhaust inside. So it's not just a fake tip, Audi, where the exhaust is then somewhere under the car. So it's a real functional exhaust tip. Obviously the exhaust pipe is only this big, but you know, the tip is there and the exhaust is there too, which is nice. Good touch. Something that's not a good touch is the fact that this is a 71,000 euro car in this version, and there's no electric boot lid. It's kind of weird, I'm not really sure why, but it is a manual. When we open this up, we get about 550 liters of usable space, which is of course excellent, very usable. Your ski holiday fits in here. You got a roof box option, obviously, with the roof rack. So, you know, more than plenty. And as you can see, it's a nice square opening as well, so that really allows you to load it up to max capacity. When you put the seats down with the levers in here, you get an additional 1,000 liters, so easily big enough even to help somebody move house. A very practical solution, and overall exactly what you want from this size vehicle. So here in the front of the DS7 is where you really start to get that French luxury feel. So looking around this cabin, almost everything you see, everything you touch and everything you interact with has like a special feature or a special story or an interesting aspect to it. And on the one hand, that's a bit tiring because there's a lot to take in, but bear with me. On the other hand, it's also cool, and it's really where DS starts to show off what they are all about. It's not all fantastic though, there are mistakes, and that starts here on the left right away with the fact that there's no window or mirror controls here on the door where you would expect them. Instead, they've moved all the window controls here to the central tunnel, which is a whole thing in itself. And now I have this design element here with the chrome and some kind of special printing method for that chrome, and my window switches are here. And I've had this car for a week now, and every single time I want to operate a window, I go here and I have to reset that it's over there. I'm sure you get used to it eventually, but it's a solution to a problem that didn't exist. The second problem is piano black. You guys know I hate it. And again, it's on spots where you touch things the most, like on the door handles, on your steering wheel, around the shifter. It makes no sense. Why is it there? If you want to use the material, then put it somewhere where people are not constantly putting their fingers. It makes no sense to me. But that said, there are a lot of very nice materials in here. Everything you see, everything you touch, and everything you lean on and use every day is just fine quality materials. It's very nice and it feels luxury and expensive in here. So that is mission accomplished. If we make the round through the cabin, behind the steering wheel are my mirror controls that I mentioned that were missing from the door. Now I know you're supposed to adjust your mirrors while you're standing still, and I know it's not something you do every single day, but it is convenient to have your mirror controls right here at your fingertips. Because when you have a thick jacket on, or when you have passengers and you adjust your seat a bit and you just want to make some changes to your mirror, now you got to go here and look at it and you're not in the right position, and it's inconvenient. It's a solution to a problem that didn't exist when you just put the controls over here. Furthermore, down here there's some, your fuel filler cap is here, some window defrosting stuff, so that's fine, that can be down there. Then we move to the steering wheel itself. Nothing going wrong there, nice and clean, because they moved the cruise control to a separate stalk behind the wheel. Good solution, Audi does that too, no issues there. But the piano black buttons will be instantly smudgy forever. Every time you touch it, every time you eat a cookie in the car or anything in the car, you will leave smudges on those buttons. Makes no sense to put them there. But it's pretty simple, volume controls and 2 scroll wheels and a few buttons for your phone, your voice assist and for your radio. So that's super simple. You can control several things on the screen and on the driver's display with that. Excellent, that is how you want it, nice and clean. Behind the steering wheel there's some shifter paddles, and those are actually connected to the gearbox that works with the combustion engine. So that's nice. If you want to shift gears yourself, you can go ahead. The paddles though don't move, so the thing you press is a button on the paddle. Not really sure why that's the case, but there we go. Behind that there's 2 normal stalks for your indicators and your wipers and your lights, so that is nice and conventional. All is well there. You would think it gets a bit busy here with the shifter pedals and then the stalks for your lights and so on, but it isn't. In reality, you'll probably never use those shifter pedals. I'm not really sure why they've done that. Probably to accommodate the sport mode, or maybe if you're towing something, because this is 4-wheel drive. But other than that, they're not really necessary. It doesn't get too busy here. It's fine. You easily have space to reach either or. Through the steering wheel I got my driver's display, which is a full-size display, so not a small display with some banks of warning lights and status lights on the side, so that's good. And of course you can put anything on there, from your navigation to your hybrid system to your power reserves and so on. Very nice and usable, and you're going to have to work with that because this car has no head-up display. Shifting attention to the middle, you have this special clock that comes with this version that turns in and out of the dashboard a bit like a Bentley or a Rolls-Royce. It's a bit spielerij obviously, but it adds to that luxury feel. And some nice manual vent controls. The temperature and such and the speed you have to adjust in the screen, but at least you can manually adjust the direction of the airflow, so that's good. Then below we got the infotainment screen. Well, obviously this is where you control the whole car, anything from your radio to your settings to your apps and so on. Navigation by TomTom, all is well there. There's a bit too much in the screen because things like your seat heating and so on, I personally find it nicer that there's a button here on the dash somewhere that you can just press, but that's not the case. On the other hand, you could argue that it's cleaner this way. You can fall on either side of the argument. There are some shortcut buttons underneath the screen that are capacitive without feedback that will take you to your car settings or your home screen right away. So that is convenient. Underneath we have a little flap to reveal a deep bin with 2 USBs and a 12-volt socket. There's also a wireless charging pad inside, so that is excellent. Interesting to note is that the space for the USBs is square and looks like it used to be a USB-A, but they've retrofitted, I think, a USB-C connector inside. So, you know, good solution, at least it's USB-C. Closing that back up, we get to the middle tunnel, and that's an interesting point I want to make here. In the video of the Toyota Prius, I was shaking the middle tunnel a bit, and a bunch of people in the comments were like, dude, why are you doing that? It makes no sense, nobody does that, this is pointless. Well, if I shake this, it is completely rigid and solid. So it shows that, you know, if you put a couple of extra screws in, then you get a different result in terms of stiffness and rigidity of your interior. Which is not a problem, but it's just something that I, as a car tester, do to, you know, give you a sense of the quality and the features inside a car. Just so you know. This middle tunnel itself, I mentioned the chrome design element here with your window switches, your window locker and your door locker. Personally, I don't like this. It's not necessary. The chrome does not look good, and I'm sure it's some kind of fantastic material, experience, printing method or whatever, but it's not necessary. It doesn't contribute anything to the equation, and personally, I don't think it looks good either. What I also don't think is good is that the driving mode button is here on the side, about as far away from the driver as you can get. The driver is on this side of the car, so you would expect that button to be under the gear shifter, for example, or here maybe, but it is as far away as possible. It's not that I can't reach it, but it's not, like, why is it over there? That nobody thought that it would be easier to put it closer to the driver. I don't know why that is, but okay. There's some piano black around the gear stick, which looks a bit like a Power Ranger's leg, but okay. It has some nice leather on it that you can maybe rest your hand on, and you could actually operate the screen with your hand resting on this, so that is kind of nice when you're driving. Simple P, N, and D, and of course the B for some extra regenerative braking. Underneath there's a little cubby for your key, 2 cup holders, and a big storage bin here in the center that opens up and is quite deep and big. All around, it's quite a nice cabin, and especially when you start looking at things like the seats and stuff, yeah, you can really start to feel that French luxury, like I already said. And that's also where you get like the stories, like this is supposed to represent a watch band, and then there's some kind of super fancy inside-out stitching or something that has a special name. You see the sort of quilting here on the doors and on the dash. It's all that extra bits that makes you feel special and that makes it feel expensive here inside, which is great. And you can see it really well thanks to the panoramic roof in this version. Really something you should have when you have a dark interior. And I think it really brings the car together. It's quite nice. Now obviously we got to do a little bit of driving in this DS7. And currently we find ourselves on the highway in full cruising mode. So that means engine is in full hybrid, everything is in automatic. We got acoustic glass all around, so it's quiet. And it's generally a very pleasant place to be. These seats are comfortable, I fit in them quite easily, 18-19 way adjustable of course, so that's good too. What's not so good is the seat massaging, by the way. That's kind of a weak affair. You get little pokes in the back here and there, but it doesn't really do much for me personally. But they are comfortable, and I have a good overview out and rearwards as well. A lot of light in the cabin thanks to the panoramic roof despite the gloomy day. So yeah, it's all very nice, a good way to travel. There are several options for the powertrain that are available. Sport mode you can forget about immediately because this is not a sports car. That'll just give you, full power from both electric and combustion, but absolutely not. You're never going to use sport mode. You're never going to use these flippers behind the steering wheel either to change gear, so that is a useless mode. The mode that you have it in most of the time is hybrid mode, like I have it now, where the car figures out what kind of power demands are currently needed and will adjust accordingly, obviously depending on the state of charge and so on. So that's probably what you'll be driving most. The other one that you'll probably use on several occasions is the full electric mode. So you can lock it in full electric for when you're in your street, around your house, when you're in an environment zone and so on. And the car, depending on your state of charge again of course, will then stay locked in full electric mode, also when you floor the throttle. Because we're doing 110 now, if I floor it, there's the engine, and we're doing 150. Then you use the engine because you demand full power, but when you lock it in electric, then you only get full electric power. So that's a nice mode to have where you can sort of adjust your driving, the way you're driving and the way you get your power delivery. Then there's also a 4x4 option, because this is a 4-wheel drive car that I also think you'll never touch, because why would you? This is not a car that invites you to go off-roading or any of that nonsense. That is just not happening. The only use case I can see there is when you're maybe stuck in a slippery field for some reason, or if you go on ski holiday or when it's slippery, for example, because that mode will give you permanent 4-wheel drive. And that is different from the normal driving modes where the power will only be used on the rear wheels when there is traction loss at the front. So those are your options, but like I said, you mostly use hybrid mode where the car just figures it out for you. We have a 1.6 liter turbo engine in the front. We have a 14 kilowatt hour battery in the middle with an electric motor in the rear. So that is a nice combination drivetrain with about 300 horsepower. a bit more than 500 Newton meters, as you saw in that little sprint. Excellent for overtaking, getting on the highway, passing a bunch of trucks, getting off the highway. Very nice power delivery. There's a bit of a delay in hybrid mode when you floor it. First you get some electric acceleration and then the engine kicks in. So you're gonna have to learn how to sort of time that properly. But it's a good amount of power for the size and the weight of the car without it getting overwhelmingly quick for no reason. And it's an easy way to drive with this kind of power. And by no means you're going to be the fastest vehicle in the world, but also by no means do you have to be ashamed when you go to Germany on occasion, for example. So that's nice. I quite like this amount of power for this size car. Here in the back of the DS7 there is a lot of good news, starting with the fact that all the materials back here are on par with the front. So that's excellent. It feels luxury here as well. The same goes for legroom. I have about this much space left behind myself with 1.83 m. So that's excellent, suits the size of the vehicle really well, and it's not like you're cramped back here. That's not the case for headroom though. As you can see, I am basically touching the roof. There's about this much space between my head and the roof, so that's not ideal. Anybody above 1.83 will not fit back here. And it gets even worse when I get to the middle seat. That simply doesn't fit. I can't sit normally here. So for even a short journey, this is not going to happen. As a family car, this works as long as your kids are under 1.83 or if you're not transporting people any taller than that in general. What's good though is that the seats are not big. They're especially not very high. So they're very comfortable to sit in, but they end around my shoulder. So that is excellent. That means there's a lot of space back here to look towards the front of the car, which is very important, I always say, for the connection to the front of the car, but also to get information from the outside through the front of the car and not feel claustrophobic back here. It really adds to the comfort, especially for kids that are obviously a lot shorter than I am, that they can still see through the car easily. So that is also very well judged. Overall, it's a good place to be. It's a bit featureless. There's not that much to do here. You got some ventilation over there. There's some USBs and you can adjust the temperature, but that is about it. And there is some mistakes like the piano black around the vents and the piano black on the door handles here, which makes no sense to me. It doesn't look good, constantly smudging, not a good solution. But that said, overall, it is a pleasant place to be. Also, thanks to the panoramic roof, there's a lot of light back here, so you don't feel claustrophobic despite the dark interior. And overall, it's a good place to be. What's not so good, last point of criticism, is the middle armrest, which is, as far as an armrest goes, fine, but the cup holders are permanently exposed and you're always in there with your hand. So that is not a good solution from DS, and there's also no ski hatch, by the way. So that is not ideal either. When you take it off the highway, it is obviously a plug-in hybrid, so you can use that 14 kilowatt-hour battery to drive most of your driving fully electric, which is quite nice. So the school run, the sport run, going to the office and back, most of that you can do electric. And unfortunately, there's no fast charging or anything available, so you'll be charging this at home or maybe at the office. On the one hand, that's fine, because when you buy a plug-in hybrid, you'll probably have charging either at home or at work. On the other hand, I always feel a bit disappointed. It's like, I don't need 900 watt fast charging or anything, but just give me 50 so I can plug it in when I go grocery shopping and I can come back to a full battery. It just adds to the usability of the car, I think. I already mentioned that you're never going to use a sport mode. The theme of this car is mostly that it's comfortable, it's relatively soft, so it's a pleasant cruising car. Once you show it some corners, you quite quickly run into the limitations of the setup, where it doesn't really want to go around corners quickly. It doesn't really want to lean on itself and the suspension and the power. So it's not really a car that invites you to any kind of fast driving or anything. In a straight line, of course, no problem, but yeah, as soon as it gets a bit dynamic, that's not the reason you're going to buy this car. Driving in town is actually quite nice because of the size of the car. It's easy to place. It's not an enormous car that you'll never get in and out of the parking structure, for example. The steering is nice and light. The cameras are crisp. So overall, also when the distances get a bit smaller, it is a very pleasant car to drive, and with enough space in the back for your kids and some bags and some groceries, maybe a few friends. It is also a car that you can definitely use in everyday situations, as well as on a road trip or a small holiday or even a ski holiday. So as far as that goes, it's a good all-round size car, and I also think with a good all-round powertrain connected to it. Now this car does have faults, like I mentioned in the cockpit tour. The design for the sake of designing something is not really my kind of thing. I prefer a more functional approach. But I do have to admit that after driving this car for a week now, it is a pleasant place to be. And you sort of get lulled into this French luxury cocoon where you sit down and every time you think, it's nice. And maybe that's the theme of this car, is that everything is nice. The seats, the controls, the steering weight, the way it cruises, it's all very nice. And after a week with this car, I can totally see why you would hate or love this car. I can completely understand when you get out of a Mercedes and you get into this and you're like, oh no, absolutely not for me. But at the same time, I can also fully understand that if you've driven Audis for all your life, you go like, no, I want to go something completely left field, and you get into this and you're like, yes, I love the stitching, I love the clock, and I love these design elements. I want this. I can totally see both sides of the argument. But that said, there is quite a lot of competition in this space for this size vehicle. I mentioned Audi, BMW, Mercedes already, Lexus, of course. If you want to stick with the premium brands, if you want to go cheaper, Skoda, Toyota, Nissan, almost every brand has a car in this size. So there's a lot to choose. But I think judging by how much this car costs, if you can afford it, you're probably looking at the premium models. And yeah, you really have something to choose there, like going for the Germans, going for the Japanese, or in this case the French, all with a very different style and all with a very different character. So I'd say, why not? If you have the money, if you don't care about depreciation or rest value, if you want something completely different, why not go for a DS? I think it's cool that they offer this. I think it's cool that they're building an entire new brand out of DS. And the proposition is nice. I quite like the idea, even though it's maybe not fully my style. I can totally see that somebody would fall in love with this. And that's all I got for you in this video. Hope you like it. Let us know how you feel about DS. We'll be driving the DS4 in a couple of weeks as well, which is same brand but a different car proposition. So when that video is finished, I'll link it up here as well. For now, thank you very much for watching. Give it a thumbs up, and a sub to the channel is always appreciated as well, of course. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers!